Good evening. My name is Kim Anderson, and I'm happy to be here as an invitation from the AAUW to host and facilitate this conference or this forum with these elected officials. So tonight we'll be hearing the answers to questions that you've submitted from the candidates for sheriff, who are Jesse Thomas and Royal Ross. Oh no, I said the wrong name. Royal Ross is somebody else.
They're like 0 for 3 on your name.
Ross Spicer. Actually, I knew Ross when he was a little guy, and I don't know why I said Royal Ross. So I apologize for that. And I hope that isn't the start of the way things will go for us tonight. Our candidates for county attorney are John Fossum and Brian Mortensen. So at the beginning, we'd just like to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about why they would like to serve in this capacity. And then we already have quite a few questions from the audience, but if there are additional questions, members of the AAUW will be gathering them from you and bringing them up to me. What we try to do is make sure that we're asking a variety of questions so that a lot of issues can be heard. So thank you again for being here and for those that are watching on FCTV. So let's start with you, Jesse.
Can you guys hear me okay?
No.
How about now? I'll have to hold it. All right, so I'm Jesse Thomas. I'm your current Rice County Sheriff and hopefully your future Sheriff. I've been with Rice County 26 years. I'm on my 27th right now. I've served in pretty much every capacity, starting with a correctional officer, and I was Chief Deputy for 7 years before being your Sheriff last November. I'm the second oldest of 5 siblings. I grew up on our dairy farm in Bridgewater Township. I married my wonderful wife, Megan, who's here tonight, and we have 2 kids. I attended Bethlehem Academy and graduated from St. Mary's in Winona with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. What I've done to prepare myself along the way is, I attended a couple different training sessions. In 2015, I went to the new Sheriff Chief Deputy School for a week, and then in 2017, I attended the FBI Leads week-long class, and then in 2018, I started the BCA Senior Leadership Management class, and in 2021, I completed that. So,
Into it louder as well as...
I have to put it like in my mouth like this. Okay. All right. So some things I do outside of law enforcement is I am a board member for the Hope Center. I've been involved with Salvation Army for over 10 years, where I'm currently the board chair. Last night we had a Shop with a Cop event, so I participated in that. Also participated in the Bowl for Kids' Sake for the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and last year our team raised about $3,000. So I think that's probably about it on my personal level.
So I apologize that these mics are a little goofy for us tonight, but the people in the audience also want to hear, so try your best to use the microphone as well as projecting.
All right, can you hear me pretty well? All right, I can get pretty loud, so. All right, well, I'm Ross Spicer. Again, I'll start out with, I grew up, was born and raised in the Faribault area, so pretty well aware of this county, and I guess for me, I started with law enforcement back. I've always wanted to be a cop, probably since I was little. Then I, graduated from Faribault High School, public schools, and then I went on to St. Cloud for a year, and then I went to Mankato State. It's now Minnesota State, Mankato. Graduated there with a four-year degree with a Bachelor of Science. After that, I've worked many different jobs, lived in many different houses in this town, so I've kind of grew up all over, done a lot of different things. So after college, I think I roofed for a year, then I worked at the Rice County Jail as a correctional officer, kind of like started like Jesse. After that, I went to Waterville PD for part-time and full-time, so I've been a cop for about 20 years, a little over 20 years now. Came back to Rice County as a deputy. After that, I worked in investigations for about a year and a half, then promoted to sergeant. I've been a sergeant for 10 years, worked in patrol. I've worked in the courthouse for 4 years, seeing that, oversaw that, security. Now, currently, I am the investigation sergeant, so I run that division, tasked with 5 investigators. Throughout the department, to prepare myself, I've gone to numerous trainings, leadership trainings. I'm an instructor in many different areas for the department, from defensive tactics to verbal defense. So then after that, currently, I guess I'm motivated because I want to be that leader to motivate, empower, and develop other officers and along with the community. So my main goal is, to be the sheriff. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Ross. I'm sorry I got your name wrong before. Okay, so now you have heard the introductions from the 2 candidates for Rice County Sheriff, and we'll hear now from the 2 candidates for Rice County Attorney, starting with John Fossum.
My name's John Fossum. I am originally from Northfield. I went to K through 12 school in Northfield, graduated from McAllister College. Graduate in St. Paul, graduated from William Mitchell College of Law in St. Paul. Practiced in St. Paul for a couple of years. In 1996, my wife and I moved to Northfield, near the house where I grew up, and we have been living in Northfield most of that time since then. And we have a daughter who just graduated from high school, started college this fall. And we've been very involved in the community. I've been a member of the Northfield Historical Society Board, been a member of the Northfield and Faribault Rotary Clubs, and had a significant number of significant amount of board service. I have been Rice County Attorney for 8 years. I was in private practice for 20 years prior to that time. Also spent a year in Afghanistan training police and prosecutors back in 2007 and 2008. And like I said, I've been county attorney for 8 years. I think we've worked hard to make the office a better functioning office. And I'm really excited about the next 8 years, about continuing to do the work that the office does and do it well, and some of the things that we are planning going forward, and I look forward to talking about that more later.
Thank you. I'm Brian Mortensen, and currently I'm an assistant county attorney here in Rice County. Been here for almost 6 years. Prior to that, I grew up as a military brat, moved around in various places in Minnesota and Wisconsin, was born in Duluth, and went to law school, started practicing in Southwest Florida. I clerked for the Honorable Judge Sherry Polster Chapel in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida. After that, I went on to prosecute at the State Attorney's Office in Naples, Florida, which is a county of 350,000 people. Baptized by fire as a prosecutor there, handling anything from DUI to homicide. And when my wife and I had our number 2 and number 3 children that were twins, we decided we needed to come back to Minnesota and be closer to family, and so we came here to Rice County. I came to Rice County to help improve the quality of trial prosecution in our county. And over the last 6 years, I think that I've done the exact job that I've been brought here to do. I've been prosecuting in this county now 6 years. I've handled some of the county's most complex cases, was one of the 2 attorneys that took the Paul Seaman case to trial, which was one of the longest cases that this county has seen on record. It was 5 weeks long. The reason why I'm running for county attorney is I've seen how an office with leadership and direction can be run, and I think that there are a lot of improvements we need to make in our county with the services that we provide, especially the quality of prosecution that we make in this county, and I think that we can do better, and so that's why I'm running.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we're going to ask a question of all four of you again, and we'll begin this time with the candidates for county attorney. And this question from the audience is, what are the largest issues in the office? And I'm going to just say over the next 4 years. And what plans would you have to address those issues? So in other words, what goals do you have for the upcoming 3 or 4 years in the office if you are elected? And Brian, let's start with you.
In the Rice County Attorney's Office, we've seen a substantial amount of turnover over the last 3 years. We've lost 8 attorneys in 3 years, and if you look back even farther, we've lost even more. We need to work on retaining high-quality attorneys in our office, and we need to make sure that we're training the attorneys that we have in our office. There's a problem with new attorneys in our office is that they don't receive in-office training. They get sent out to other organizations to do beginner prosecutor training and everything, but when attorneys come into our office, there's no formal training program that they go through. If I was elected, I would be implementing a 6-month training program for all new attorneys that come into the office, as well as adding to that a mentorship program to make sure that the attorneys are ready to go into a courtroom and try cases on their own. Our law enforcement officers go through field training before they can go on the road by themselves, and prosecutors and attorneys should also have a program before they go into court on their own. I think that we also need to repair our relationship with law enforcement. The biggest complaint from law enforcement that I've heard is that our office doesn't listen to them as well as they should. I think that we need to build a relationship of respect with our law enforcement and cooperation so that when we have to bring issues to our law enforcement is knowing that we're talking to them with their best interest in mind, and that when they come to talk to us about issues, that we're willing to listen to what they have to say and change our ways if necessary.
Thank you, Brian. John?
Well, first, we do have a good relationship with our law enforcement, and that's just not accurate. And obviously, I can't address why people leave the office, but turnover is what happens, particularly in government, particularly given our proximity to the metro area. People find other opportunities. So I would say that, the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to over the next couple of years is a program that was announced just a couple of weeks ago, which is our diversion and deflection program. It's a $1 million grant that we got, one of 25 jurisdictions in the country that got this grant. And it's $1 million to spend over 3 years for diversion and deflection. And deflection allows law enforcement to take people who are using, who have treatment needs, and send them off to a treatment program rather than send them through for prosecution. The program also funds the pretrial diversion, which allows our office to do the same thing, or pre-charge diversion, to give people an opportunity who are struggling with addiction, and instead of clogging the courts with minor drug offenses, we can use this diversion and deflection program and get people the help they need and help them avoid years of drug abuse and criminal prosecution. And it will I think ultimately save a lot of money. And this program was proposed to me by Chief Sherwin and Chief Elliott in Northfield. Both of them called me up and said, "We would like to do this. Will you sign on?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And Sheriff Thomas has also been involved in this program, and I think it's going to be a great program going forward. And I'm excited to see over the next couple of years how that program works out and what the results are, because it is going to be it's a tremendous change. It's a complete sea change in the way we deal with minor drug offenses.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Now we'll ask the same question of the two candidates for sheriff. Again, the question is, what goals do you have for the next 4 years should you be elected? Go ahead.
All right, make sure my mic's on again. All right. In the next 4 years, we're going to have a lot of change. We're going to have a new facility for the sheriff's office and the jail. I see, for us as a sheriff's office, I know we don't have a lot of turnover rate as deputies. We don't have a lot of people leaving. And that's kind of been the history for us for the officers. But on the other hand, we have a big turnover rate in the jail, and I know Jesse will hit on this too, but it's since I've been there and he's been there, it's a revolving door. It's how do you keep correctional officers, right? Let's start with the new facility, so that's going to be one task. And then again, the ultimate thing is public trust. We know that law enforcement nowadays, I mean, it's a roller coaster all the time. I mean, you're up and you're down. So the main point is that community involvement, right? What other plans can you get? I would like to see all the communities in Rice County, if we can get together, collaborate, come up with, I like to call them action plans, right? I don't have a specific thing, but I just call them action plans and kind of go from there. So that's my overall goal in the next 4 years is to, again, law enforcement be at the top. I mean, just get back to where we used to be, but again, it's up and down. So the next 4 years, I think that's my ultimate goals. Thank you.
We're going to try this again. All right, so my goals, can you guys hear me? My goals are, one is mental health is going to be a huge issue, continues to be an issue for both the people we serve and our employees. So one thing that I did when I was chief deputy is, so one of the things I did was I spearheaded a procedure to get mental health wellness sessions for our staff. And so I met with a couple different psychologists who did that and researched what it costs for our staff to actually, attend these sessions. And so each staff, I made it mandatory, so they all had to attend, so they all knew exactly what it was. On the resident side of... How's this? All right. I think we can get rid of that one. Get that back to the city of Faribault. All right. So on the other side of mental health, we have the residents that we serve from the sheriff's office. Are you restarting my 2 minutes on this or no? Okay. So when we looked at building a new jail facility, we looked at what do we need to do to better serve that clientele. And we added the holding rooms that have different colors, natural light, a softer feel, so that when we do have people with mental health and we have no place for them to go, at least we have something that gets us by until we find a proper place for them to go. The other thing I've worked on is community relations. And so I met with all of our townships. There's 14 townships. I've met with each township board trying to establish a line of communication so that we can always be in the know of what they have going on and what we need on our side of operations. And then since I'm out of time, that's it.
Well, technology is always interesting, right? We're all going to talk about that tonight. So I would just want to call out to the audience that I have a lot of questions in front of me for the county attorney candidates, but not a lot for the sheriff candidates. So dream some up and give them to the AAUW folks to bring up. This one is for the county attorney candidates, and I'm going to kind of combine a couple of questions here. Prosecution gets a lot of attention by the county attorney's office, but it's also responsible for representing the county in civil matters. Can you explain the civil responsibilities of the county attorney's office and talk about the experience and strengths that you have in that area of responsibility? And John, let's start with you.
Well, as I said earlier, I was in private practice for 20 years, and I have a broad background in civil work. And basically, the county attorney serves as corporation counsel for the county. So we have to deal with the transactional issues, we have to deal with the zoning issues, we have to deal with there's real estate transactions. We do child protection work. We do child support collection. And we do a lot of civil work on behalf of the county. And so with 20 years of private practice, I have touched all of the issues, or almost all of the things that the county deals with. And because I have that background, because I have that experience, over the last 8 years, I have been able to deal with a lot of things without spending a lot of other staff time on it, because that background and experience has been important and I think very useful. That we have to advise the board on data practices issues. We have to deal with the data practices requests. We have to deal with open meeting law questions. And can we have an open meeting? Can we have a closed meeting? Those are the questions that come to the county attorney's office all the time, and those are the things that we have to be prepared to deal with. And again, because I spent 20 years in private practice before I got elected to this job, I have the background and experience necessary to do that.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's very clear. I am a career prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for about a dozen years. One of the things that gives me the skill of is being able to adapt and change to issues that come before me. That gives me the ability to research and understand laws as I read them. Back in 2014, when Mr. Fossum was running against Mr. Bowmaster, he said, the truth is that lawyers learn things and we can go and find the law we need to find. Having been in prosecution for the last 12 years, handling on average of a couple hundred cases every year, I have the ability to do the research necessary to do the job. But one of the other truths about being a county attorney is you have a lot of attorneys in the office that may specialize in things more than you do. As a person that specializes in criminal prosecution, I would have the experience to help train those individuals in their fields. But I would also point out that I am an attorney that is willing to acknowledge areas that I don't know as much as others. And I would make sure to hire people or have people in the office that knows and are experts in those fields in order to represent the county effectively. The county is represented by the county attorney's office, but the county attorney doesn't handle all of the civil cases. There are highly qualified individuals in our office currently that are handling virtually all of those civil issues, from commitments and guardianships, CHIPS cases, juvenile cases, our appeals, our data practices. It's not something that the county attorney has his hands on at every stage. And so I would make sure that we keep highly qualified individuals in those positions in order to fully represent the county and advise the board.
Thank you. The next is a question for everyone, and we'll start with the candidates for sheriff. And I'm kind of gathering a couple of different questions together here, so I might need your help in interpreting. This is a Domestic Abuse Survivor Day today. What role does your office play in the issue of domestic violence? And what happens when a victim is reluctant or uncooperative? Now, I'm adding to that question, what steps can you take to make sure victims' voices are represented? And then here's where I might need some help, because there appears to be a specific question about how do you interpret 611A? Is that something you can answer? Okay. As it relates to domestic violence victims, and how do you intend to put that into practice? So let's start with the candidates for sheriff, and this is a big issue about domestic violence. You might speak to what your experience is around that in Rice County as a law enforcement, and then specifically some of the question refers to the prosecution and victim support. So Jesse, we start with you.
Sure.
Good luck with that microphone.
Yep. Let's see how she does. So yeah, domestic assault. So our staff respond to domestic assaults. When we looked at having a blueprint committee for our county, I was on the law enforcement team for that. and we looked at how do we better respond to domestic assault calls. So one thing we looked at is St. Paul had a blueprint team, and we looked at how they handled their domestic assault calls. We came up with the 3 questions that we had to ask after each time we went to a domestic assault call, and we made sure that those 3 questions were answered. And the other thing that we implemented was that at the end of the call, we took the victim's cell phone and made a phone call to the advocate at the Hope Center. That way that number was in their phone, and we also initiated that contact so that they had the best representation if they went to court and to help them along their path of recovery. I think that probably answers most of it.
Thank you.
All right, again, Jesse summed it up because we'll especially work in the road, but no, with the Hope Center and the advocates, I know I first started, I think when I was first investigations 10 years ago, we started a group there. I didn't get to see it through. I was part of that, then I got promoted and went to the road. But yes, with the blueprint cards and the questions asked, again, I know a part of that question was, what do you do when the victim is uncooperative? Well, again, you just we have the advocates if they want to. We don't push a victim, right? We never want to push a victim to that point. So it's just providing the information and there for them, and basically if we can call them victim to just maybe to reassure. A lot of times it's just listening. Honestly, the public just wants somebody to listen to them. So it's not always finding an answer, but if you listen and just provide that information. Thank you.
Okay, I think that a lot of the question that I read earlier was specifically for the county attorney candidates. So do you need me to repeat that, or can you just launch from there?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and answer that question. I mean, obviously, domestic assault is one of the very common cases we see a lot of. Obviously, because in our office, we get them primarily if they're gross misdemeanors or felonies. So if they are people who are repeat offenders, they tend to wind up in our office. The initial cases, misdemeanor cases in our cities that happen in Northfield and Faribault tend to be in the city attorney's offices. But these are some of the most challenging cases that prosecutors deal with nationwide because of what is often the reluctance of the victim to testify or to appear or to participate. And often they change they often say they no longer want to participate. And there's always the question, is that because they're being pressured by the offender? Is that because, what has happened and what happens to the case at that point? And I've been at national seminars where people talk about this and try and figure out how do you resolve these cases. We have an excellent help here in the Hope Center to act as advocates for the victims and to work with the victims, and we have a victim witness coordinator to work with our victims as well, and trying to maintain contact and try to maintain trust with those victims. But these are challenging cases. There is a lot of emotion that is wrapped up in it. It is a case where it's difficult to say that there's ever a winner, because there's always there is a long-term relationship there. Often there are children involved, there is money involved, there's a lot that goes on and into the question of how do we resolve those cases. So the best thing we can do is do our best to maintain contact with the victims, to build a relationship with them so that we can deal with those cases going forward. But they are some of the most challenging cases we handle.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. I completely agree that domestic violence cases are some of the hardest cases that we handle. And that's because we have to understand the victim that we're dealing with. There's something called a cycle of violence. And I think prosecutors handling domestic violence cases need to have an in-depth understanding of the cycle of violence. That is how the assailant is treating the victim at different stages through their relationship and how they get that victim to cycle back to them in the relationship. And understanding that cycle of violence can allow you to communicate better with the victim. Communication with the victim is what builds trust. And I think that it's important and something that should be stressed in the county attorney's office that our prosecutors are actually the ones communicating with the victims at the important stages of the case. It's important that we deliver bad news to the victim instead of letting somebody else do it for us. We gain trust from the victim doing that as well. And another understanding for victims of domestic violence is sometimes forcing prosecution with an uncooperative victim puts them in greater danger. What I mean by that is sometimes a victim is uncooperative and they don't want us to keep going with a case. That's okay for them. What we want them to understand is that it's okay for them to seek help. It's okay for them to call 911. And if they think that all we're going to do is force prosecution, there's times where we can actually disincentivize a victim from calling 911 and getting help because instead of listening to them, they think that we're going to force a charge on somebody they don't want charged with a crime. We need to make sure that we're protecting our victims. Another thing is under 611A, something that our office rarely ever does, is we have the ability to demand speedy trials on behalf of victims. We need to resolve victims' cases faster than we have. Years is unacceptable.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to ask the next question to the candidates for sheriff, and this is about the new facility that's being built. So, can you explain a little bit more about the benefits of the new facility? And part of the question that came from the audience is, are there any offenders that are in jail more than a year and a day? So can you speak to, the current situation and how it will be changed with the new facility? And we start with you, Ross.
All right. Again, I don't have the numbers. I wasn't part of the numbers with the facility, but as far as for the future, it is better. Again, looking at, obviously years to come cost is always going to rise, right? And then with the area it's at, I feel it's better because you have, you can grow if you need to, build on or add on. Whereas if you kept it downtown here, basically you got the whole block and that's about it. You either go up or close down to the road in the future. So I think in the next, 50 years, it should be still good. So I'm for it, and I think in the long run it'll help out. As far as offenders in there, a year and a day, then you go to prison. So the attorneys can speak on that. It's just if you're sentenced to a year in jail, then you do a year in jail. But that'll ultimately we can work. We have everybody in one facility. If you have like work release or things like that for the people, we can operate out of there. So in the long run, I just think it's a good thing. I know it's tough with expense, but it'll only get spendier. So thank you.
All right, so one of the reasons we basically had to build a new facility is the Department of Corrections was going to make us a 90-day facility, and that would have taken effect this last July. And that would have meant anybody in our facility who had been there for more than 90 days would have to be outsourced to a different jail. So currently we're paying $57.50 a day to have an inmate at a different facility. So that's either Steele County or LeSueur County, Scott County, and we've taken some to Goodhue County. So currently, what do those numbers really look like? What are the taxpayers paying right now to have our jail? I just looked at our budget. I'm at $115,000 for the year to have inmates go someplace else because we don't have room for them based on their classification. There's a lot of money. And then you look at what does a new facility cost. The new facility brings a lot of other things for us. Currently we have no programming space. So the new jail facility will have the programming space. It'll also have a classroom so we can actually educate the inmates or detainees, however you want to address them, so that when they leave our facility, they're better suited to come back into the community and be more of a positive maybe a role model might not be the best word for it, but they're more of a positive influence in the community versus being more of a drain on our society. So our goal is to get them in a better position when they leave so that they don't have to come back and revisit us in our new facility.
Thank you. So there are a number of questions here about leadership and management, and the fact that the position is a position for an attorney or for a law enforcement professional, but it's also a position about leadership within a department and managing people and managing a large budget. So can you speak to your experience about leadership and management? And John, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay, well, as I said, I've been in private practice. I was in private practice for 20 years. I ran my own business. I ran my own office. We had employees come and go during that time frame, and I also, when I was in Afghanistan, led my own team in Afghanistan. And we have, at this point, we have 21 people in the office. We have 11 lawyers and 10 support staff in the office, which we are currently managing. In the time that I've been in office, we have a budget at this point of roughly $2.5 million. In the time that I've been in office, we have finished $600,000 under budget and returned that money to the county treasury. We have managed the office effectively and stayed within and under our budget year after year, and been responsible stewards of the office. And leadership, I think, is primarily by example. And so to me, the concept is that, I show people, I model what I expect people to do. I come in early, I work all day, and expect the same of other people. Brian talked about a mentorship program. We don't call it a mentorship program, but we work with young lawyers, and normally what happens is since I handle the serious cases in the office, I handle all the murder cases, the criminal vehicular homicide cases, I usually have one of the young lawyers work with me on the file and allow them to do a lot of the work and get some of the experience that they're not going to get otherwise in the work that they're doing. That's the mentorship program that we have, and those are the efforts we make, is to get people an opportunity to work with me, to work with the other experienced lawyers. And we also make sure that if people have questions, they feel free to come and ask them and talk to me and the supervising attorneys and other people in the office to get that experience that they are looking for.
Our office has 11 attorneys, 3 of which are supervisors, and we have lost 8 attorneys in the last 3 years. That is virtually a 100% turnover of our line attorneys. That is not running an office efficiently. And with a budget of $2.5 million, which is about $1 million more than the prior county attorney, it's not a virtue to say that you've raised the budget and are only saving approximately $75,000 a year. One of the other things that comes with prosecuting is it costs money. It costs money to go to trial. It costs money to hire experts. And that's one thing our office hasn't done. We haven't hired experts to prove cases at trial. It may cost us money to do that, but our job in this county is not to save the county money. Our job is to use our budget to effectively prosecute the cases in our county. I also think that a formal mentorship program in our office will provide better training to our young attorneys, which in turn, by keeping them and fostering their careers in our office, we are going to save money on having to hire new attorneys, having to train new attorneys, having to recruit new attorneys. So overall, our budget is what it is. The county commissioners tell our office how much we get to spend. The way that we use that money needs to be efficient. It needs to be appropriate. And when a good portion of our money is being used for resolving turnover issues, we're not being a good steward of the county's money.
Can I respond briefly?
Yes.
Okay, we do hire experts in cases. What we don't do is give people a blank check and say, we want to have an expert. We need to have a budget, we need to know what you're looking for, and we need to know what it's going to cost. And so that's what we do to deal with it.
Brian, any final word?
No.
Okay. Well, this is a forum, not a debate, but I know it's hard when you have something you want to respond to, so we try to be respectful of that. The question, gentlemen, candidates for sheriff, is about leadership and managing a department and a department budget. So, Jesse, let's start with you.
Sure. So, sooner or later, I'm going to get this mic thing down. So let's back up to patrol deputy. As a patrol deputy, I was an FTO. As an FTO, I got to train our new staff as they came in on the road. I think that's where your leadership starts. You mentor people and you train them and you mold them the way that you think is the best for them to become a deputy. And then as a supervisor, I oversaw our FTO program. And then I was promoted to lieutenant. As lieutenant, I was in charge of keeping track of our post mandates and tracking our training for our staff. I also oversaw our policy manual. So I made sure that our policies were within our standards for the sheriff's office and with the post board. And then as the chief deputy, I oversaw the basic operations of the sheriff's office. And I got to work with former Sheriff Troy Dunn in preparing our budget and our numbers so that we had the best possible scenario going into the next year and having enough money to make things happen. I currently have a $12 million budget I work with, and sometimes it's challenging because it's a lot of different parts to that budget, but it's something I enjoy working with. I like numbers, so I'm not too afraid to take that on. And currently we are under budget for the year, and I can honestly say that I've either trained or hired every person on the sheriff's office side except for 2 people. So, thank you.
All right, again, I'll start off with like the 3 main things I talked about as a leader, right? And if me and the sheriff's department, 1, I want to motivate, empower, and develop. And again, that begins with, my personally is with high integrity, empathy, and trust. Again, Jesse, I started out as an FTO. I've been a sergeant for 10 years. I've been an instructor in defensive tactics, vertical defense, and other areas. So I know how to lead, and lead from the front. Again, it comes down to I want to provide the citizens of Rice County with the best law enforcement agency, all right, and to gain that trust back again. Again, for me, it's finding, for one, representing myself, the department, and the people, because that's what you really are. You represent the people of Rice County. And again, the budget, he said we're under budget. I don't have the budget numbers, so that's we'll go with that. Again, that's my main goal. Again, motivate. Thank you.
We're going to stay with the candidates for sheriff for just a quick answer to a question, and then each candidate will have a few minutes to make some closing comments and share anything that you haven't had a chance to speak to. I have a number of questions here that we didn't get to, and it's amazing how fast an hour can go by, so we appreciate your patience on that. So the question for the sheriff's candidates is about our change in our demographics in our county, and specifically, I guess perhaps more specifically in the Faribault area. What will you do to reach out to the Somali and Hispanic communities as sheriff? Ross, start with you.
All right. Make sure I put that on. Again, it's changed even in the last 10 years I've been here. And again, reaching out, whatever that may be, it may be community involvement. So again, it's going to take both sides. And like Jesse said, we have like Shop with a Cop. We have different things provided with even the Hope Center, the different groups. But again, it takes everyone involved to make that happen. And again, we've had, I know Jesse, I met even working in the courthouse. I met with people of all the different, even with this, like you said, the smaller community, the elders, and it takes everyone. There's no specific, there's, I want to say, how do you put it, cure-all, you know what I mean? It's going to take everybody collectively. Is it more community events or in that nature? So I see it's a work in progress. There's no definitive answer, but it counts on everyone. So thank you.
All right, so one thing I inherited as the sheriff is the Rice County Fair. And so when I looked at what problems have we had at the fair, because everybody loves going to the fair. It's great to see the 4-H kids out. And we've had some issues, so when I met with the new Faribault chief, John Sherwin, we decided we wanted to reach out to some of our diverse community. So we organized a meeting with the Faribault Diversity Coalition, and lo and behold, we didn't have a very good turnout. So then we looked at what other options do we have. So then my chief deputy and I met with Wano across the street there in Central to try and establish a line of communications with the Somali community. That didn't work out very well, so then we looked at how else can we reach out. So then we looked at met with Joy Watson from the county, and she had a good connection with Wadi, who is at the resettlement, Somali resettlement community. So we met with him, we met with all the elders, we met with the people from the mosque, and we decided that we needed some liaisons to come down to the fair and help us communicate and help us try and work on making a safer fair. So we had several meetings. We had a great fair except for about an hour, and then we had a meeting after the fair to discuss what went wrong. And we've come down to the conclusion that it's the teenage kids, and how do we address teenage kids? And somebody who's raised a couple of them, it's sometimes challenging. So just today, we had another meeting to establish a schedule of meetings going forward so that when we get closer to the fair, we have a better understanding and a good idea of how we're going to address the problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, of course, the audience can't see, but we have a really full room of people interested in these candidates and trying to learn where they stand on the issues. So the next part will be just your closing statement. You will each have 2 minutes, and we'll be about ready to conclude. And I don't think I have to remind the audience here about the importance of voting, but I'll just say a word about how important it is for you to become aware of the issues and take a look at the ballot and make sure that you vote. You know that early voting is available right now, and you can vote by absentee or you can vote by going into the county government center. The election day itself is on November 8th, and that is your opportunity to participate in the democracy and be part of the solutions. And I want to thank all of you for the very thoughtful questions and for being here tonight, and thank our audience on FCTV for their attention to these contests. So we'll hear first from our candidates for Rice County Attorney, and we'll begin with Brian.
Thank you. The 3 things that I think are most necessary for our county is that we start prosecuting our violent offenders effectively, that we begin communicating appropriately we continue and communicate more effectively with our victims, and that we repair our relationship with law enforcement. Once we do those 3 things, we're going to be able to focus more on the mental health and the controlled substance problems in our community, our low-level and first-time offenders. One thing that is a stark difference between myself and the current county attorney is that over the last 8 years, our county has not implemented any new restorative justice programs on its own. There is a veterans court, but that was implemented district-wide. As a county attorney, I would be looking to work with multiple groups to implement a mental health court. One of the other things is the diversion program. Mr. Fossum mentioned it. However, the prior 8 years, we haven't had a drug diversion program, even though that's been contemplated in Minnesota statute since 1995. A diversion program is long overdue for our controlled substance users. It shouldn't be limited only to our first-time misdemeanor offenders. It should be also for our first-time felony offenders for controlled substance use. And I would also like to note that there's only one of us up here that has been endorsed by law enforcement, and I can assure you it's not because I've made any promises to law enforcement or even asked them for their endorsement. Law enforcement approached me from the police department and the sheriff's office, making it clear that there needs to be change in this county and that I'm the candidate that law enforcement is looking to make that effective change. Not only have I been endorsed by law enforcement, but I've also been endorsed by 2 labor unions, AFSCME 65, as well as the AFL-CIO, because they know that I'm going to put our work environment first and to make sure that our county attorneys feel comfortable in our office in a team environment.
Thank you, Brian Mortensen, candidate for Rice County Attorney, and now John Fossum.
Well, it's a very self-serving argument to say I'm unhappy working for him, so I should be the boss. It's also important to remember that part of the job is to hold people accountable when they make mistakes, whether they're law enforcement or not. And there are law enforcement officers that support Brian. There are law enforcement officers that support me. The difference is I haven't asked them to sign a pledge and say, can I use your name? And the other difference is that I haven't made anybody any promises. The important thing about this job is to be independent, to be able to say, I make the decisions based on the law, the facts, and the case in front of me, and I don't owe anybody anything. And so if you're, endorsed by the union for the attorneys in the office, when it comes time to negotiate, who do you owe your allegiance to, the county or the attorneys in the union that voted for you to support you to run for county attorney? I think what the county wants is what the county got when it elected me, which was independence, the ability to look at the case in front of me, to look at the office, look at the things that we need to do, and say, we need to make these decisions. We did start a restorative justice program, which unfortunately got derailed for juveniles by the pandemic. So much has been derailed over the last couple of years. And that's unfortunate, and we haven't had the opportunity to resurrect it yet. But we are working on other programs. And nobody said this diversion and deflection program had anything to do with misdemeanors. Misdemeanors, this office doesn't prosecute misdemeanor drug crimes. They come to us because they're gross misdemeanor or felony drug crimes, and those are the ones that we would be looking to develop this diversion program for, and we're doing it with the support of law enforcement and with the encouragement of law enforcement and the leadership of law enforcement. And that's what we're going to do going forward, and that's what I think people want in the county attorney.
That's John Fossum, candidate for Rice County Attorney. And now we turn our attention to the 2 candidates for Rice County Sheriff. And you have an opportunity to share a little bit about the closing statement. And we'll start with you, Ross Spicer.
All right, I guess in closing, we all have goals and dreams. And I've gone through this career. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I want to reach the goals and the ultimate dream, and be sheriff. I would continually improve to provide the best service to our community through training, education, and gain that community trust and community involvement. I love the job. I want to make that change, help the people, when they're at their lowest. We're out there. And again, I emphasize it's being out in public, talking to people, and listening. Listening is the number one thing. You don't always have to have a solution right away. But if you just listen to somebody, everybody wants to be heard, and that's what I'm here for. That's why I want best candidate for Rice County Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. And now Jesse Thomas, candidate for Rice County Sheriff.
Sure, thanks. So I think I've proven myself over the last 11 months as your current sheriff. We've had a couple trying times. We've had some cases that I've never been involved with that we've had to deal with. We've gotten through those. We've done a good job. I know there is an article or a letter to the editor in the paper that talked about how some people are saying our crime rate is out of control. When you look at our crime rate, In 2021, as Rice County, just Rice County, pull everybody out, we actually had a lower crime rate than we've had in the last 8 years. So I think we're doing some stuff right. I prepared myself along the way. I've taken every opportunity to better myself, to attend trainings, and prepare myself for this step in my career. I'm hoping everybody votes Thomas for sheriff because I'm more than just a nice guy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse Thomas, candidate for Rice County Sheriff. And thank you, gentlemen, for answering all these questions. And thank you, the audience, for the questions that you submitted. And especially thanks to the AAUW organization for convening these forums and allowing us to become more knowledgeable about the candidates on the upcoming election. Don't forget to vote on November 8th. Thank you.